The Samsung S26 Ultra has a pretty decent camera experience right out of the box, but for most of the photos I take with this phone, I just feel like it can do even better with just a few tweaks. These are some of the best pro-like shots I've gotten with this phone over the last few months, so in this video I wanted to share all my camera settings, the filters, shooting, and editing tips that I think makes for the most pro-like shots that I can get with this phone. By the way, I'm not a pro photographer at all. I really barely know my way around manual settings, so you don't really need to follow everything I say, and this guide is going to be super easy and all focused on practical everyday shooting. Alright, first let's go over what this camera is good at and not so good at and see where we can do some fixes. The camera overall has better focus and gets more detail than previous years. There's better lens coating for less flares and reflections. Skin tones also got a lot more natural for portraits, but where it does struggle compared to other top phone cameras and actual cameras is the digital sharpening, highlights, and contrast. The combination of these things make for either really crunchy, messy looking images where it's doing too much to fix things that don't need to be fixed, or it tries to overbalance things, making photos feel really flat without any personality to them. Most of these are software decisions that Samsung coded in for their idea of how these photos should look, so we're going to try to change that. First, if you don't have it already, go to the Galaxy Store and install Camera Assistant. It is an official app from Samsung that gives you more customization in your camera settings. Open up Camera Assistant from your camera settings and enable 2x zoom shortcut. I use a 2x zoom really often for most of my shots with the main lens, and having a dedicated button right there saves so much time. Getting the focus right and getting the details matter more than a quicker shutter speed in my opinion, so I also like to enable prioritize focus over speed. And since over sharpening is one of the main issues, you absolutely need to change the picture softening setting. I keep this dial to medium to make photos look softer and more natural. If you still think it's a bit too crunchy, then put this on high. For advanced resolution options, there is an option to turn on 24 megapixel mode. I do have it on, but I personally don't use it when shooting because really the processing is different and the 24 megapixel shots come out murky and even crunchier. So it's just a nice to have for now. Next, outside of Camera Assistant, in the main camera settings, look for Photo Enhancer. I keep this to prioritize quality because, like I said, I want as much detail as possible. Turn on the composition guide with the grid lines on so you can better frame your shots. And finally, go down to settings to keep and toggle this on for camera mode, filters, and portrait zoom. This makes sure your setup stays locked in every time you open your app. Okay, let's talk filters. There's actually a lot of tuning you can do with them, and they're really convenient to use for everyday shooting since you don't need to do any editing afterwards. It can just be your default setup every time you open the camera app. We already did what we could do for the sharpening, but what made those photos even worse is the highlights being too high and the inconsistent contrast levels. So with that, you want a filter that will fix the highlight issue every time and also help you even out the contrast levels. Filters work best when you use a good photo source to create a filter for you, so I actually want to recommend two different ones. This filter is what I called the Fix. I used one of my own moody photos during my trip to Busan. What this filter does is it handles the harsh highlights much better while also upping the contrast to let shadows just be shadows, so the photos look less flat, hides the rougher edges, and looks a bit bolder. There's also slightly more warmth to give it some more life and make the photos look less clinical, so there's more personality and more justification to the pops in color, which makes for cleaner, less rough looking images. And on the other side, I have this filter that I call Flat, which I made using another Instagram creator's post and is basically the opposite of the first filter. This one also handles the highlights much better than Samsung's default processing, but this one actually decreases the contrast a ton to make for ironically flatter images. But this sort of stylistic flat image is definitely much cleaner, more realistic, and easier on the eyes. It also helps make the colors more even by canceling out any harsh details. Now these filters won't work for every situation, so you might have to play with the contrast and the saturation levels here and there, but for the most part, these two filters fixed a lot of my issues with the default post-processing, and they've been the most fun for me to use too. Of course, now if you want to use these filters on your own Samsung phone, I'm going to include the links for these reference images down below. Now if you want to get even more out of these small phone camera sensors, you can shoot in the Pro mode within the camera app. There's also the Expert RAW mode, but that's actually a much slower shooting experience, and the aggressive sharpening is still kind of there. The Pro mode has less post-processing, so it's a much more actual RAW file, plus it's also much faster to shoot with. I like to shoot with both the RAW and JPEG files available, since there's some shots I just want to post right away without any editing, so that's when those JPEGs come in handy. When I do shoot in Pro mode, I actually just rely on the auto adjustments and don't touch anything manual, so don't be intimidated by these extra controls here. Now after you shoot these raw photos, we gotta go ahead and edit them. For editing, I'm still just using the free version of the Lightroom app. Some features are locked of course, but I basically never use those anyway, so it's fine. And the absolute easiest way for you to really change up your photos and simulate a more pro-like look is by using presets. A lot of photographers and content creators online like to sell their presets to their viewers, but for me, I don't really have one that I personally really made myself from scratch. So I'm just going to show the best free ones I found online and include them down below so you can try them yourself. So what I did was I found all kinds of different Lightroom preset apps in the Play Store. I just downloaded the free ones I wanted from maybe 4 or 5 different apps. You just open those files up in Lightroom, go to create preset, name it whatever you want, and hit save. Then when you go to edit any photo, you just go to presets, tap on user presets, and there you have it. Especially when applied to the raw files from the S26 Ultra, you can just see how different things look with just the preset applied. Seriously, it makes my photos look so much more cinematic than before, like something taken from a real camera. One thing I do want to say though is that it can actually be pretty hard to find the right preset that works for all your photos. So for me, I downloaded a ton of free presets, deleted most of them, and only kept a few that work consistently with the kinds of photos I usually take, and I tweaked them to be personalized for me. The main thing I do even after the preset is applied is some color correcting. I usually desaturate 1 or 2 colors that are doing a bit too much work on the image. I basically just try to balance it out here so the photo looks natural to my eye. And sometimes for pictures with really bright light sources or bright skies, there's definitely some heavy overexposure, so I make sure to decrease the highlights even more as well as the whites too, just to recover some blown out details and make things look a bit better. Also play around with the contrast if things look too contrasty or too washed out. Also, because we are shooting in the S26 Ultra's Pro mode, there's actually very little native sharpening applied to the raw file, so you actually do want to bump up the sharpening slider a bit to get those textures to pop without making it look too crunchy. And finally, I always make sure to do some noise reduction. We are dealing with tiny sensors inside these phones, so there's bound to be some noise and grain, and I make sure to up the slider slightly to get cleaner looking images. So yeah, those are basically all the touch-ups I do for my raw photos on Lightroom, and I'm pretty satisfied with them. Now, if you want to give a more dynamic look to your new S26 Ultra while also adding some new functionality to it, then you might want to check out the new collection of air button cases from Pitaka. These Pitaka cases are ultra slim and light, but made with really premium feeling materials. These have aramid fiber texture, so not only do you get some extra grip with these, they just look and feel really nice in the hand. If you were worried about your Ultra feeling bulky or ugly with the case, you don't have to worry about that with these cases. But really the special part about these air button cases versus other ones is that these actually add some new functionality with 3 buttons on the case itself, which you can map or customize to whatever shortcut or routine you want. These work via NFC, so your phone knows whenever each of these buttons were pressed, which is really cool. Since all your volume and power keys are on the right, these buttons also don't interfere with those, and you're simply just getting some extra features on your Ultra. With the Air Button app, mapping these buttons is super straightforward, and you can even set up some really specific ones through modes and routines to be as personalized for you as possible. For me, I have the top button mapped for turning the ringer on or off, the middle button for quick access to my wallet app, and the bottom one for Spotify. With all these companies lately taking away our physical buttons, it's cool to have a case that adds some more tactile feel and useful shortcuts to help with my day-to-day. So yeah, if you're looking for a nice premium feel case for your new S26 Ultra, go check out Pitaka's air button cases using my affiliate link down below. So that's it for my photography guide for my Galaxy S26 Ultra. These are super simple, minimal tips that anyone can do, so I really hope this guide was helpful to you guys wanting to get more camera out of your phone. Let me know down in the comments if this helped, and feel free to share your own camera tips so we can all help each other out. If you want to see more practical, everyday tech videos like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button to support the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.